What's up, Guff? We are here. We have been waiting, just like Optimus Prime on Earth. And we are grown-up fantasy football.
It's a beautiful
we still love
sunset in the
Transformers.
background, Joey.
Thank you very much. James Reiner, Zach Maziar's here. I'm Joey Marino. And we are giving you some deep takes on some fantasy topics. So be sure and subscribe for more of this juicy fantasy content and click the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about our top 5 trades that we think will occur before the trade deadline. And we're going to give them to you in our top 5 order, going from 5th to 1st. So Zach, why don't you start us off with the 5th most likely to happen trade?
Yes.
Tell us who it is.
Very well said, Joey. All right, at number 5, we have Alshon Jeffery on the Philadelphia Eagles. So Eagles have not even had him this entire season. He's been injured so far this whole season. We have Travis Fulgham kind of showing some good signs, showing signs of promise. Deshaun Jackson coming back into the fold after an injury. And that offense just really not looking that great as a whole. If they get a few more losses behind, they might not honestly care too much about winning this season. So I'm thinking that Alshon Jeffery could actually be traded. And I think they've already kind of discussed it and thought about it, had talked about it in the offseason a little bit before too. So we've seen some of that news kind of come out. I'm thinking the 2 trade spots that are most likely to occur would be the Indianapolis Colts or the Las Vegas Raiders. So Colts really banged up right now at the wide receiver core. We have Michael Pittman Jr. out. We have Paris Campbell out right now. They do have that vet in T.Y. Hilton, but maybe they're wanting to get another vet wide receiver in there just to shore things up. Right now, they're really going with the old school type look with Phillip Rivers and T.Y. Hilton. So who knows? Maybe they're going age over beauty in this situation. But I could see them making a move at wide receiver just to kind of get some health back on that team. And then also could see this being the same case with the Las Vegas Raiders. Right now, Bryan Edwards, Henry Ruggs have been battling injury. We saw Henry Ruggs come back in this past week, though. Have a good game, but he is a field stretcher in all means, and they really have a young wide receiver group. So they may want to bring in a veteran here just to be able to have that vet presence, be able to have someone who's done it in the league, who can mentor these younger wide receivers and show them really how to blossom. So those are the top 2 teams that I could see Alshon Jeffery going to. What are y'all's thoughts on those?
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to try to get rid of Alshon Jeffery for sure. And even if they can't find someone to trade with, I could see them even just releasing him, really. He's not helping their team. They're kind of in a rebuild mode with their wide receiver core. So I think he's gone. I think he's done. And I really think this is kind of the end of Alshon's career, really. Yeah, if he goes to another team, he could maybe help him out for a year. Raiders, I think, would be a good spot. I agree with you. What do you think, Joey?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. He is injury prone, so I don't know if he's bringing in very much health to a core. But 2 other spots I thought of that could use a receiver would be Washington and the Jets, obviously. But yeah, I agree with all that pretty much.
No way. The Jets have Chris Hogan.
Oh, excuse me. My bad. They already
and
have
Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder.
Brashard
Braxton Berrios.
Frank Gore, great receiving back. Gosh,
y'all remember the hype on Perryman beginning of the season?
Man. Mm-hmm. We haven't even seen him. He got hurt like the second game of the season. I think the second game. But wow, yeah, we saw.
So why not bring in Alshon?
That's just the Jameis Winston effect. Yeah, who knows? Maybe, and he's already been in a color of green, so who knows? Maybe the Jets green is still suitable to him. I don't know. I don't think Jets green is suitable to anybody. All right, moving on to our number 4 trade that we think will occur before the deadline, AJ Green. So far we have not seen the AJ Green that we are used to. He's coming off an injured season from last year, just recently re-aggravated an hamstring injury, but think he's still going to be practicing and probably not missing time, if any at all. But yeah, we haven't seen AJ Green perform. We've seen lights out play by Tyler Boyd, by T. Higgins. They're looking like that's going to be their more dominant force in this offense. And from what Zach Taylor has said, it sounds as if AJ Green is more of a decoy than actually a star prime wide receiver in this offense now. Last week's game, actually, against the Ravens, there was a little commotion. There was a little video, and it didn't have any audio, but some people are speculating that AJ Green actually mouthed, just trade me now. So I don't know. This could be something where, the was it the squeaky wheel? I almost said the leaky cauldron. The squeaky wheel or the leaky cauldron could find its way out. And I'm thinking if he does try and request that trade, try and get to a different team, I think the best fit for him could be the Green Bay Packers. I think right now, Davante Adams coming off of a hamstring injury, he should be healthy now, but having him lost and not being able to use him, Allen Lazard out, Aaron Rodgers is a phenomenal talent and is able to spread the wealth and make receivers that aren't as great look better, but at some point in time, he still needs that go-to receiver. That is Davante Adams by all means, but to be able to have an AJ Green to spell him to say, hey, we have two outside threats that you try and cover one of them because you're not going to be able to. One of them is going to be open at all times. I think that would be phenomenal for them to have. Not sure if it'll happen, but that's, I guess, just something to maybe look out for and hopefully look forward to. But what do y'all think?
I don't know if the Packers would want to get AJ Green, seeing as Davante Adams has been riddled with injuries as of late. That they want, washed up old man AJ Green. I don't know if they would get him. I mean, they need help, but it's Aaron Rodgers. He can make. He's like Jordan. He makes anybody around him good. But yeah, I agree with all that. I think Cincinnati probably wants to get rid of him. They're just using him as a decoy. Which
now, call to mind, Joey, the Packers signed Devin Funchess in the offseason. I think
forgot about that.
Well, Devin Funchess opted out.
Yes, Devin Funchess makes AJ Green look spry and youthful. Okay?
Does he? Does he really? Well, either way, I think Vegas, Washington, and the Jets are still good places. Even Indianapolis, maybe, are all good spots for him. James, what do you think?
Yep.
This is a similar situation to Alshon Jeffery. I think this is towards the end of Green's career, too. I think the Bengals will try to trade him. But I don't like the fantasy implications. I don't see him going anywhere and really improving, being a valuable fantasy player. I think this is it for AJ. Sad to say, but I think this is it.
I think fantasy-wise, you do hope he actually goes to an offense where he isn't the number one. Because right now, he is considered still the number one, and that just takes him out of coverages, takes him out of schemes. If he went somewhere like the Packers or a different offense where they already have a number one that teams are having to game plan against, he could actually have some better fantasy production. Not saying the best, but just better fantasy production. So I think that's the hopes, that he goes somewhere like that.
Yeah, I guess so. But moving on to the number 3 trade we think will occur before the deadline.
Number 3, my lord.
Number 3. Mr. Jarryd McKinnon, running back from the San Francisco 49ers. So San Francisco has a crowded backfield. And yes, they are riddled with injuries as well, with Raheem Mostert going down, Tevin Coleman going down. However, Mostert is back and is performing like he has been. So that moves Jarryd McKinnon back to the RB2 role, and Tevin Coleman will be coming off IR in a little bit. And I think that moves Jarryd McKinnon back to the RB3 role. Now, when he was in as the RB1 taking over, he showed a ton of promise. He showed that he's back pretty much from back-to-back ACL injuries, which is incredible to come back. So honestly, golf clap for you. But he showed a lot of versatility too. He can run up the middle and he can catch passes out of the backfield. He's explosive. He's still Jarryd McKinnon of old. But I think that a couple of locations that could possibly use Jarryd McKinnon, Chicago is definitely one. We kind of talked about a little bit of running back locations in our last episode from Le'Veon Bell. I think Indianapolis might be a good spot too for him to kind of spell Marlon Mack. We've seen Marlon Mack, get a ton of carries.
You talking about Jonathan Taylor? Or?
No, not Marlon Mack. Jonathan Taylor. Sorry.
He's going to spell Marlon Mack on the bench.
That's right. Well, they're both injured, so
Yes. He's going to just rotate injuries with Marlon Mack.
that's how you do it. No, we've seen Jonathan Taylor excel in this offense, but they still have Nyheim Hines in there, and you've got Jordan Wilkins in there. It's kind of icky, Bringing in Jarryd McKinnon, who's a good name and who still has talent, would be a nice RB2 to Jonathan Taylor. And I think Minnesota may also be able to use him. If Dalvin Cook is going down, he's a little bit injury prone. They have a very capable backup in Alexander Madison, but do you want to get Alexander Madison hurt too? It might not be the most ideal place for him, but I think it is a possible location. I think we need to at least acknowledge Minnesota.
I'm kind of... See, he has a big contract they signed in 2018, $30 million, 4 years.
Oh, they reduced it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Really? Okay.
Yeah, they reduced it before this season, yeah. Well,
my thinking is that if Le'Veon Bell was shopped around and no one wanted him for a 6th or 7th, who wants Jarryd McKinnon? He's almost just as old as Le'Veon Bell. He's 28, Jarryd McKinnon.
Wow.
So I think the 49ers would love to trade him if they got an offer. He is the 3rd running back, like you said, but I just don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, I actually could see any of the 3 running backs from the 49ers going somewhere, either Tevin Coleman, Jarryd McKinnon, or even Raheem Mostert. All of them, Raheem Mostert just got injured this season, but Jarryd McKinnon and Tevin Coleman have not shown that they are super healthy running backs. And Raheem Mostert over the offseason almost did get traded. He requested to be traded, and then they finally came up and restructured some things and were able to pay him more. So in terms of Jarryd McKinnon, Tevin Coleman, like you're saying, James, I don't know what they would be able to get for them in a trade. Raheem Mostert probably holds the biggest name value for them, to where if they are saying, hey, let's go with these 2 older running back, or, these 2 veteran running backs, maybe get a younger running back in the draft at some point in time. Maybe we can get some bigger value for a Raheem Mostert trade. So I don't know. I could see any of the 3 going somewhere. And I actually could see the Chiefs being a good landing spot, kind of what we talked about in our previous episode. For Le'Veon Bell, the Chiefs could have a 1A, 1B type situation at the running back helm. Damian Williams opted out this past season. So it could have been something where Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were working together in tandem in that backfield, but now since he's gone, it was just CEH running the ball. So maybe they're looking for another running back to kind of spell CEH. So I could see if something were to happen with any of these 3 running backs, it could be to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think that's viable. Another team I thought about maybe mentioning would be Miami, maybe. It's kind of murky. Myles Gaskin is starting to emerge, but Jordan Howard is literally just a goal line back, and maybe they could join their old teammate Matt Breida. Who knows?
Yeah. And the Dolphins are looking good, so maybe they do want to try to get a better running back.
Jarryd McKinnon, I don't know why, but in my mind I thought he was like 5'6", like. I thought he was like a Darren Sproles size, but he's 5'9" and 216 pounds. So he's like a pretty decent sized running back. Like, it's not just like he's one of those dink and dunk running backs that, if you have him in on all 3 downs, they're going to get injured probably. Like, he probably could take on like a good bit of touches.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to number 2.
Yeah.
All right. We have Dwayne Haskins. It looks like Washington has given up on their 1st-round draft pick in Dwayne Haskins. Rivera, he said it's not fair to the rest of the guys that we're still trying to teach us one guy and the rest of the team's ready to win now. They made the decision to go with Kyle Allen, and it sounds like Alex Smith is the plan in a couple weeks if Kyle Allen can't play. So, yeah, it looks like Dwayne's out, and I think they would try to trade him. Like we said for Jarryd McKinnon, I don't know what they can get for him. He hasn't shown any promise. I don't know if any team would be interested.
Well, Dwayne Haskins kind of had some decent stats to start the season. Now, decent as in a little bit better than Kyle Allen running. Mm-hmm. I think there's upside with him. I don't know how much there is. Obviously, there's draft capital invested. A couple of landing spots I'm thinking of would be Jacksonville to back up Gardner. And I think both the New York teams, the Jets and the Giants. Yes, I do not. That is correct. I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer there.
Really?
Not necessarily. I don't know.
Danny Dimes?
Danny Dimes.
Manuel Jones?
Manual. Automatic Jones.
That's correct. Yeah.
See,
I don't know.
I actually disagree with those takes. I think he needs to go somewhere. He's the first round talent. I think teams could possibly be interested in that. Okay, he was a first round pick. He's got the talent. He just has to have the teachability. He has to have the sit behind a starter experience type, kind of like Jameis Winston's doing right now. He is sitting behind Drew Brees. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking the Steelers would be a good landing spot for him. Big Ben is 38 years old. Probably will play a couple more seasons, but to have a first round caliber talent sit behind him, learn the ropes, learn how to play ball, because they'd be able to sit him for a couple of years. It's not like something where he'd have to be thrown in there, and he's not sitting behind a young guy. He's sitting behind a vet who's done it before. I think the Steelers could be a great landing spot for him, where he could actually come out in a couple of years and start to play really well.
I think that makes sense. A lot of people were linking Jameis to the Steelers this offseason, and he goes to signs with New Orleans. But I think, when you say Steelers, that makes a lot of sense. Big Ben and Haskins are both big guys, so there wouldn't be too much of a change in the offense if, Haskins goes there and eventually becomes the starter. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the Jets and the Giants, I don't necessarily want him to go there. These are teams I think that could use him, though. I'd rather see him at the Steelers.
Use him into the ground.
I think those are good takes, guys. Moving on, number 1, Kerryon Johnson. The Lions have the most crowded backfield I've ever seen. Adrian Peterson, DeAndre Swift. I guess the coaching staff doesn't have a lot of faith in Kerryon Johnson because they went out and drafted Swift and then signed Adrian Peterson when he got cut from Washington. It really doesn't make a lot of sense because the fantasy community was pretty big on Kerryon Johnson. I'd love to see him get traded to someone else where they use him as that bell cow back. What do you guys think happens here?
Do we think he can be a bell cow back anymore? He's been injured several times within the last couple of seasons. So do we feel like he could take on that bell cow role? Like, not playing the devil's advocate for the Lions, because I agree with you, James. I don't know why on earth they signed Adrian Peterson when they could have a Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift duo. But they're wanting to give Adrian Peterson 20 carries a game and then give DeAndre Swift a couple targets. So whatever, that may be more Matt Patricia than anything. So, but I don't know. Maybe they're just seeing something that we're not in terms of Kerryon Johnson's health, in terms of the hits he can take. Do we think he could take on a bell cow role if he were to be traded somewhere else?
I think he's got the ability.
Yeah.
I watched him in college, and he was a bell cow at Auburn. However, they ran him into the ground at Auburn, and Detroit doesn't necessarily run him into the ground, but I don't know how much his body can take. And that's kind of sad to say for someone who's only like 2 or 3 years into their NFL career. Mm-hmm. It is weird that they went out and drafted DeAndre Swift, and then especially weird bringing in Adrian Peterson. But I have a question for you two. Do we think Adrian Peterson is kind of the new Frank Gore, where he will be the vet that stays around forever and maybe goes to different teams and maybe stays a couple years? Do we think this is a longer situation in Detroit for AP?
I think you hit the nail on the head. He's the new Frank Gore. You're going to talk shit about him behind his back, and then you're going to be that guy who sneaks him to your lineup and hope no one says anything.
Oh, gosh. I think, honestly, Adrian Peterson might stay in the league longer than Frank Gore, because Adrian Peterson sounds crazy. Like, he sounds like he could literally tear his ACL and still come out the next game and try and play. So I could see him actually playing longer than Frank Gore, sadly. But in terms of Kerryon Johnson, I think a good fit for him would be the Washington football team. I think we've talked about J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson. being great kind of dual threat roles. J.D. McKissic more of that pass catching back. I think they need like a pure runner, and Kerryon Johnson kind of fits that mold. They got rid of Adrian Peterson. I think Kerryon Johnson, he still has the pass catching ability, but I could see him being a good pure runner for them and being able to, on the third downs, change the pace type things, throwing Gibson or J.D. McKissic.
Yeah, I think those are great spot. It's a great spot for him. I think Chicago would be another good spot for him too. Possibly Denver.
All the people we said Le'Veon Bell might go.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's going to do it for our top 5 players that we think will be traded before the deadline. To recap, at 5, that's Alshon Jeffery. At 4, A.J. Green. At 3, Jarryd McKinnon. At 2, Dwayne Haskins. And at number 1, Mr. Kerryon Johnson. So,
real quick, who do we think has the highest fantasy value being traded?
Of these 5?
Yep.
Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah, probably Kerryon Johnson or Jarryd McKinnon.
Yeah, I would say running backs have a higher chance, so I would say Kerryon Johnson too.
Mm-hmm. So leave a comment below on who you think is most likely to be traded out of these 5, or someone that you think will be traded before the deadline. And maybe even leave a comment who you think has the most fantasy upside out of these guys. But without further ado, go like and subscribe, go grow up, and get guffed.